What does it cost to say no to China? 16 years ago, we saw the cost, but that was just a prelude to what's happening right now. This happened in September of 2010. A Chinese fishing boat rams two Japanese Coast Guard vessels near a chain of uninhabited rocks in the East China Sea that both countries claim. The Japanese arrest the captain. Beijing demands him back. Tokyo says no. So China restricted the export of rare earth metals to Japan. Rare earths are 17 metals which nobody can pronounce, and they go into almost everything Japan is good at making. The magnets and electric motors, the ceramics and chip making, optics, lasers. You need tiny amounts, and there's no substitute for them. That's the problem. If you don't have them, you're screwed. At that time, Japan bought over 90% of their rare earths from China. And long story short, within weeks, Japan had to release the captain. I mean, they had no other choice. Their industry was being squeezed. A preview of what was to come 15 years later, kind of now. Which is why Japan spent the next 15 years trying to make sure that this could never happen to them again. I'll go into more details later about how they did this, but the point is they got their dependence on China down from over 90% to under 60%, a third of the way out. But as I found out with my first divorce, a third of the way out is not enough. I don't know why I said that. I've never been divorced. What am I talking about? Anyway, last year, Japan found out it wasn't enough. By the way, if you find this useful, I put together a free guide on how to retire by 2036. It's the whole framework that I use. It costs nothing. There's a link below in the description. And it also comes with my free weekly newsletter where I discuss subjects like I'm discussing in this video and more. Right, let's get back to Japan though. Now, all of that was 15 to 16 years ago, but what's going on today? That's what's important. So that started on the 7th of November 2025 when Prime Minister Takaichi is being questioned in Parliament, and she is asked what Japan would do if China invaded Taiwan. She says that a Chinese attack on Taiwan is one of the few things that would trigger their military to get involved. That's all she said. But that's all she had to say. Beijing demanded she withdraw that statement, but she stood her ground. So China started dismantling the Japanese economy piece by piece. 4 pieces to be exact. Piece 1 came 12 days after her statement. China bans every Japanese seafood import. China was the biggest buyer of Japanese seafood. That one cost Japan about $500 million per year. Not a big deal when it comes to a country, you know. But in terms of angry fishermen that are going to vote, it's a different story. But Piece 2 came the same week. Beijing tells its citizens not to travel to Japan and warns students off of studying there. This is the one that actually hurt Japan because within weeks, a third of the trips already booked were cancelled. Goldman Sachs put the damage at 0.2% of Japan's entire economy. And I know that 0.2% sounds like nothing, but Japan only grows at about 0.9% in a good year. So Beijing just wiped out a fifth of that with a travel advisory, which is crazy. But still, this is just the starter to what was really to come. Piece 3 was the main meal. February, China puts 40 Japanese companies on an export control list, banning Chinese firms from selling them anything with a possible military use. By June, that list had grown to include arms of Mitsubishi, Fujitsu, Hitachi, and others. And they cut rare earths again to dozens of Japanese firms this time. Japan's own analysis says a full year without them takes 1.3% off of the economy. So take that 0.9% that I said in a good year. Tourism already knocked that down to 0.7%. If China ever turns the rare earths off completely, which they haven't done yet, but they could at any moment, that takes another 1.3% off, and then you're at minus 0.6%. That is a recession. That was the main course. Then came dessert, by the way, a bit smaller, but Piece 4. In May, 2 Japanese employees of the same industrial company are detained in the port city of Dalian. Hopefully that's right. And they're accused of smuggling rare earths out of China. They were picked up weeks apart. Japan's government confirmed it in June and said it would respond appropriately, which is diplomatic talk for we can't do anything about it. Now, this one's hard to quantify what damage it does to the economy, but the net result is no Japanese executive wants to get on a plane to China anymore, which is kind of bad. And at a 2-day summit in Beijing, China's President Xi spent the most heated stretch of the whole thing ranting at Trump about Japanese remilitarization. American officials were stunned by this because it wasn't even on the agenda. So make no mistake, China was pissed and they went to war economically. By the way, I put together a free retirement guide, how to retire before 2036, 6 steps, everything I'd do if I was starting again at 40 with nothing. No hype, no nonsense. It's free to grab. There's a link below. Check it out.